It's late, the room is quiet, the lights are off. The world has finally stopped asking things of you, but your mind hasn't. Your body is lying in bed, but your thoughts are still walking through every conversation from the day. Every sentence you might have said wrong, every decision you're unsure about, every possibility that could go wrong tomorrow. You replay things, you analyze things, you rehearse things. A message you sent hours ago suddenly feels like a mistake. A small moment from years ago surfaces as if it just happened. And the strange part is, none of this happens during the day. During the day you function, you work, you respond, you handle responsibilities, you solve problems, you appear calm, maybe even composed. But at night, when everything slows down, the mind you've been holding together all day finally starts to unravel. And it doesn't unravel loudly. It unravels quietly, in thoughts, endless thoughts. Overthinking is often described as a habit of the mind, a tendency toward analysis, a personality trait. But for many people, it's something much deeper than that. Because what looks like overthinking is often something else entirely. It's vigilance, it's protection. It's a mind that learned very early in life that being unprepared came with consequences. So it learned to stay ahead of everything, to analyze every situation, to predict every outcome, to imagine every possible mistake before it happens. This strategy once kept you safe. But here is the paradox. The same mental system that once protected you during the day is the one quietly robbing you of peace at night. Because when the world goes silent, your mind doesn't rest. It scans, and it keeps scanning long after there is anything left to find. To understand why overthinking intensifies at night, we need to understand something about how the human mind processes safety. Your brain is not designed to think endlessly. It is designed to predict danger. And when the brain has learned that unpredictability is risky, it adapts in very specific ways. One of the most important mechanisms involved in this process is hypervigilance. Hypervigilance is a state in which the nervous system becomes chronically alert. Instead of relaxing when threats disappear, the brain continues scanning for them. This state often develops in environments where emotional or social outcomes were unpredictable. Maybe mistakes were criticized harshly. Maybe conflict appeared suddenly. Maybe emotions were dismissed or misunderstood. So, the mind adapted. It became very good at anticipating problems before they appeared. You learned to read tone. You learned to analyze situations. You learned to think 3 steps ahead. From the outside, this can look like intelligence or conscientiousness. But internally, it feels more like tension. The brain is constantly asking, "What did I miss?" Another important piece of this puzzle is the default mode network, often abbreviated as the DMN. The default mode network is the system in the brain responsible for self-reflection and internal thinking. It activates when you're not actively focused on a task, during quiet moments, during rest, during the night. For many people, this network becomes overactive. Instead of reflecting calmly, the mind begins looping. It reviews past events. It predicts future ones. It constructs scenarios. And when hypervigilance is present, the DMN doesn't simply wander. It interrogates. It becomes a courtroom inside your head. Every conversation is analyzed. Every decision is cross-examined. Every possible outcome is rehearsed. A third concept that often plays a role here is intolerance of uncertainty. Human beings naturally prefer predictability, but when uncertainty once led to discomfort, embarrassment, or emotional rejection, the brain can begin treating uncertainty as danger. So it tries to eliminate it through thinking. If you can analyze every possibility, maybe you can prevent mistakes. If you can replay every conversation, maybe you can avoid embarrassment. If you can anticipate every problem, maybe nothing bad will happen. But the brain is chasing something impossible, certainty. And certainty is something the human mind can never fully obtain. So, the thinking never stops. There is a quiet exhaustion that comes from living inside a mind that never stops evaluating itself. Not loud exhaustion, not dramatic exhaustion, but the slow kind. The kind that accumulates in small, invisible ways. You second-guess yourself. You replay conversations. You think about what people might have meant. You imagine how things could go wrong, and eventually, you begin to lose something important. Ease. Life becomes something you analyze rather than something you experience. Even moments of rest can feel uneasy, because the mind fills silence with evaluation. The philosopher Carl Jung once wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." For chronic overthinkers, much of life is directed by an unconscious rule: think more and you will be safer. But that rule comes with a cost, because thinking more doesn't always produce clarity. Sometimes it produces distance. Distance from your own intuition. Distance from your own feelings. Distance from the simple experience of being present. This creates a subtle kind of grief. Not grief for something obvious, but grief for something missing. The experience of living without constantly questioning yourself. Overthinking often comes from a core fear that's rarely spoken out loud. The fear of being wrong, the fear of being judged, the fear of making a mistake that cannot be undone. So the mind tries to preempt these risks. It analyzes, it predicts, it prepares. But the more it prepares, the less it trusts. Less trust in instinct, less trust in other people, less trust in life itself. And eventually, the mind begins treating rest as something unsafe. If you're not thinking, you might miss something. If you're not analyzing, something might go wrong. So even at night when the body's exhausted, the mind keeps working, because somewhere inside, it believes that thinking is the only thing standing between you and chaos. Overthinking rarely stays confined to nighttime thoughts. It quietly shapes how a person moves through the world. You might notice it in your relationships. You replay conversations after they happen. You analyze tone in text messages. You wonder if you said something wrong. You ask yourself whether someone is upset, even when they gave no indication. You might hesitate to express emotions fully because you're already predicting how the other person might react. In your career, the pattern often appears as perfectionism. You double-check everything. You review work repeatedly. You spend more time preparing than others. From the outside, this looks like dedication. But internally, it's often driven by a quiet fear of making a mistake. Overthinking also affects self-worth. You measure yourself through evaluation rather than experience. Instead of asking, "Did I try my best?" the mind asks, "Did I do it perfectly?" Boundaries can become difficult too. You worry about disappointing people. You think through how someone might react if you say no. So you over-explain, or you agree to things you're not sure you have the energy for. Emotionally, many overthinkers regulate feelings through analysis rather than presence. Instead of simply feeling sadness, anger, or anxiety, the mind tries to understand it immediately. It dissects it, explains it, intellectualizes it. But understanding a feeling is not the same as experiencing it. And when emotions are constantly analyzed instead of felt, they often linger longer. Internally, identity can become fragmented. You know how to present yourself. You know how to respond to expectations. But when you're alone with your own thoughts, you sometimes wonder who you are without the constant self-monitoring. This is why healing from overthinking doesn't begin with forcing the mind to stop. That approach usually backfires because overthinking isn't a malfunction. It's a coping strategy, a very sophisticated one. The beginning of unlearning starts with something much quieter: witnessing, noticing when the mind starts scanning for problems, recognizing when thoughts shift from reflection into interrogation. Instead of believing every thought, you begin observing them. And that small shift changes everything. Because when you observe your thoughts, they stop controlling you. They simply pass through. For people who overthink at night, healing rarely begins with silence. Silence can actually feel uncomfortable at first, because when the mind slows down, old habits appear, questions arise, doubts surface. But healing begins when you realize something important. Your mind isn't broken. It's protective. The goal isn't to eliminate thinking. The goal is to teach your nervous system that it no longer has to guard every possible outcome. Several practices help with this process. One is nervous system regulation. Simple things like slow breathing, body relaxation, and grounding exercises signal safety to the brain. When the body relaxes, the mind often follows. Another powerful practice is shadow work. Shadow work involves exploring the parts of yourself you've learned to suppress: uncertainty, vulnerability, imperfection. Instead of trying to eliminate these parts, you learn to acknowledge them, because what the mind resists, it often amplifies. But what the mind accepts, it can finally release. There is also something deeply healing about inner child reparenting. Many overthinking patterns begin in environments where mistakes or unpredictability carried emotional consequences. The mind learned to stay ahead of everything. Reparenting means offering yourself the reassurance that may have been missing then. You allow yourself to be human, to make mistakes, to not have every outcome controlled. And slowly, the nervous system begins to update its understanding of safety. The poet Rainer Maria Rilke once wrote, "Be patient toward all that is unsolved in your heart, and try to love the questions themselves." For overthinkers, this is a radical idea, because the mind has spent years trying to eliminate questions, trying to solve every possibility before it arrives. But peace doesn't come from answering every question. Peace comes from learning that not every question needs an answer. Nighttime overthinking doesn't disappear overnight, but something begins to change. The mind softens, thoughts slow, moments of quiet appear, and eventually you realize something important. You don't have to solve life in your head before you live it. You can experience it as it unfolds. The goal was never to become someone who never thinks deeply. Your mind's depth is not the problem. The goal is simply this: to allow thinking to serve your life instead of replacing it. And if this video resonated with you, it likely means your mind has been carrying more than most people realize. But you don't have to carry it alone. If you'd like more videos exploring the hidden psychology behind behaviors like this, consider subscribing, not to fix yourself, but to better understand the mind you've been living with all along. Because the goal is not perfection. The goal is not silence. The goal is not to eliminate every thought. The goal is to become whole.